Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Meng, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. And thank you, Mr. Patel, for your testimony and for being here today. I've been looking at the President's 120-word FBI budget request, the so-called skinny, I'll call it Ozempic request, that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities.
Let's dive into the exchange between Congresswoman Madeleine Dean and FBI Director Kash Patel.
The weaponization of the FBI is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies list on that book.
So
there are people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people,
That's good.
and they were rightly called out. And you should give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury.
Veracity.
Tell the American
didn't
people how
know.
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You did
Have the
break-
audacity to actually
So,
put the
all
facts
right, then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the,
failing,
Excuse me,
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
This wasn't just oversight. This wasn't just tough questioning. This was a warning about what happens when law enforcement and political loyalty start to blur into one. And this is where the conversation has to move beyond personalities, beyond books, beyond viral hearing clips, and even beyond this single administration. Because what Madeleine Dean and Kash Patel were really arguing about in that room wasn't a policy dispute. It was a battle over what kind of country we are becoming. Every democracy relies on a fragile agreement. That power is temporary, that laws apply even when they're inconvenient, and that institutions don't exist to serve the ego or vendettas of whoever happens to be in charge. When that agreement starts to fracture, it doesn't usually collapse all at once. It erodes slowly, hearing by hearing, executive order by executive order, justification by justification. What makes this moment so unsettling is how casually the language of retribution is now being normalized. Words like weaponization, enemies, blueprints, and revenge are no longer fringe rhetoric. They're being spoken openly by people with real authority. And once those words become accepted, once they stop shocking us, the actions that follow start to feel inevitable. The real danger isn't just that someone might be targeted unfairly today. It's that the public is being conditioned to believe that some people deserve it. That if you're a judge who asks for a warrant, or a lawmaker who participated in impeachment, or a civil servant who did their job under a previous administration, then maybe you had it coming. That logic is poison to a free society. And that's why Dean's question, when can I expect the FBI at my door, matters so much. It's not paranoia. It's a stress test. It forces us to ask whether political opposition is still protected speech, or whether it's slowly being redefined as suspicious behavior. Because once dissent is framed as criminality, democracy becomes conditional. Patel's response, meanwhile, reveals something just as important. His insistence that he was the victim of a weaponized FBI may very well be sincere. But sincerity isn't a safeguard. History is filled with leaders who believed, genuinely, that they were correcting injustice, and used that belief to justify creating something far worse. Feeling wronged does not grant anyone the right to rewrite the rules. And this is where the cycle becomes dangerous. If every incoming administration treats law enforcement as a tool to settle old scores, then institutions stop being stabilizers and start becoming weapons passed from one hand to the next. At that point, the question is no longer who is abusing power, but who gets to abuse it next. The arrest of a judge, the targeting of perceived opponents, the blurring of lines between political narratives and criminal investigations, none of these things exist in isolation. They form a pattern. And patterns are what historians look back on and say, this is where it started. Democracy doesn't usually die with tanks in the streets. It dies when people stop believing that neutrality is possible, when fear replaces trust, and when loyalty to a leader matters more than loyalty to the law. It dies when institutions are hollowed out from the inside and repurposed as instruments of punishment rather than protection. You don't have to idolize the FBI to defend its independence. You don't have to agree with every judge to defend judicial authority. And you don't have to like every politician to insist that none of them should fear politically motivated prosecution. Those principles exist precisely to protect people we don't agree with. Because once those protections disappear, they don't come back easily, and they never disappear evenly. So this moment matters. This exchange matters, not because it was dramatic, but because it exposed how close we are to accepting something we once would have rejected outright. The normalization of political retaliation dressed up as reform. The idea that accountability only applies in one direction. The belief that power, once won, should be used to punish rather than govern. That's the real warning here. And if we don't take it seriously, if we reduce it to sound bites, partisan cheering, or internet tribalism, then one day we're going to look back at moments like this and realize they weren't just heated exchanges. They were turning points. If you want to keep having these conversations, the uncomfortable ones, the nuanced ones, the ones that actually matter, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. And whether you agree or disagree, your voice is part of this story too.